I am generally against tax breaks for corporations. I think one of the main reasons is because it sets up government to pick winners and losers, to decide which companies should get a government subsidy and which companies should not. And those kinds of things should be determined by the market, what consumers demand, and by entrepreneurship, what kinds of companies are good at their craft, not by government. At the same time, the whole system of tax breaks is really, it defies logic, because the way I understand the economy to work, organizations, companies that are for profit are just that they decide and make business decisions about where to invest and about where to set up operations based on what makes the most sense for them in an economic sense, where they can make the most money. And so this idea that government somehow steers companies one way or another doesn't sound believable to me. And so I think those are probably the two major reasons, but I could go on and on about the things I've seen over the last, decade plus in political life.
I'm going to try to channel the supporters of the tax breaks that IKEA got here by asking this question. IKEA was considered to be a very sought after enterprise that would come to Memphis and not go to our competitors, Nashville, Charlotte, or any other Mid-South, large Mid-South city. They wanted to come to Memphis. Why not, for the bragging rights, do what they did and give them this kind of tax break, because it would mean people flocking into Memphis, as someone says in the documentary. They will be coming from Birmingham and other places all the time to spend their money here in Memphis. Why not give them that?
So I think the thing of the matter is the argument is always changing when it comes to these tax breaks. So usually the argument is, hey, we've got to do this because it's a competitive environment and these companies will go elsewhere unless we play ball. We know that's not true in the retail space. We know that's not true with IKEA, because IKEA, again, as a retailer, has to be in close proximity to its customers. It's got to be in Memphis. That's a large city in America, and it's got to be in every large city in America that it can stand to be in, so that it can sell furniture. So the argument completely falls apart about, well, it's a competitive environment, they'll go somewhere else. And now the latest argument, as you say, Otis, is, well, there's just so much prestige that comes with it, and you'll be the first, and this has such reputational, brand effects. Well, we know that this stuff is just made up from the start of it to the end of it. And so in the IKEA case, you're right, that was one of the swan songs that we got early on. But of course, a few weeks after they got the millions in tax breaks from Memphis and Shelby County, they just announced they were going to also open something in Nashville, and they continue to open stores all across the country. It's just made up stuff. It's a made up theory about how the economy works. It's a made up theory about if we do this, they'll go somewhere else. Businesses want to achieve profitability. That is what drives their decision making. Governments getting in the middle of it actually hurts and hinders all of us. It doesn't help to make their businesses better. It hurts us all. And so that's what I'd say to the reputational effects. They just weren't there, and they're announcing these store openings all over the place. And so those things are just made up to get the tax breaks, and then they tell you what really is going to happen.
Okay. Mayor Harris, do you agree that it maybe not has gotten worse over time? I'm not sure that's the case here in Shelby County, though.
I think there is more scrutiny nationally, and there's much more conversation. And so that's a good thing to see. I don't know if it's sifted down to the politicians yet. And this is all politicians, right? This is really not a Republican or Democratic thing. I think it's just the idea among politicians is still that for the last 50 years or more, jobs has been such a high polling issue. And so if you want to attach yourself to that high polling issue, this is one way to attach yourself to it. But it's just like Mark says, if you go back to the fundamentals of the economy, government officials don't create jobs, except jobs in government, right? Businesses create jobs.
Right.
And so you just got to understand that businesses create jobs, not government elected officials. That just doesn't really happen. The economy doesn't really work that way. I think there's a lot of corporations that understand how the economy works and understand these principles as well. However, what happens is the system already exists. The consultants are already out there. They produce the reports, which are generally not worth a lot. So that already exists, and they come with these packages to say, hey, we can get you a little extra money. And so from the business perspective, they start to feel like suckers if they say, no, I'm all about the free markets. They're almost boxed into saying, okay, you've got a package of incentives and subsidies that you can bring from a municipality or from a state. I'll take it. And so the businesses are boxed in too, even if they agree that it would be better to not have this practice at all. Or, I mean, there are alternatives too. The other alternatives, by the way, we haven't even talked about, is just give everybody a tax cut, right? That whether everyone agrees that any level of tax cut across the board is going to stimulate the economy. There may be some disagreement about how much a tax cut stimulates the economy, but every tax cut helps the economy. And so you can get into that kind of conversation if you can get out of this, where the consultants bring packages and then the business gets these subsidies.
Okay. Aren't there some scenarios, and I'm not saying FedEx Forum is one of them, but aren't there some scenarios where tax breaks are warranted?
Okay, so Otis, yes, there is some nuance here. And okay, although I am against stadiums, so I'm against stadiums. That's not where the nuance lies.
Okay.
The nuance does lie in areas where there's a clear public interest, or where you think the market is not meeting its potential, its full potential. So a market failure. So your small businesses that are locked out of credit markets, they can't borrow, can't get access to capital, but could really grow their businesses. So if you've got a small business owner, maybe there's something government can do if they're locked out of credit markets to help that small business owner succeed and grow. If you've got a blighted piece of property that's been blighted for 100 years, well, across 100 years, there has been plenty of opportunity for private investment to flow into that blighted property, and it has not. And so government has a public interest in trying to see if it can, convene some private capital and getting a little bit of skin in the game if that's what it takes to make it happen. So there are some instances where the market is not working, but it is not professional sports. It is not your larger corporations that have plenty of access to financing, who are making decisions beyond what the county mayor of Shelby County thinks, right? There's no one at IKEA in Sweden or wherever IKEA is located that says, well, you know what? Let's make a decision about what our expansion profile looks like based on what the mayor of Shelby County thinks. It doesn't work like that in IKEA. It's unbelievable to say that it does, and that what we do makes a big impact on their decision. But yeah, I do think there's some nuance there, Otis. I don't think it's all black and white. I think it's 90% black and white, but I do think there are some instances where the public interest is clear.
What if Memphis and Shelby County, for example, decide, no, we're getting out of that tax break business. If you want to come to Memphis, come on, but build your own things and pay your property taxes. Wouldn't that depress the economy of Memphis and Shelby County to a degree where the public and the taxpayers would still not be happy?
I don't think so. I don't think it has an effect on these kinds of decisions. And just to go back to some other points, governments aren't in charge of some things. They're in charge of infrastructure and schools and crime, a lot of quality of life kinds of issues. And so at the margins, executives are making decisions based on those issues. Can I recruit other executives? Is it a place families want to live? And so governments can affect some of the decision-making process there. And so if we shift it from economic incentives to quality of life, we all know, or we all should know that we would get a lot more businesses through that strategy than through economic incentives. If you have high quality schools and low crime and great roads and bicycle lanes, we all know that that's a thriving community, and that'll be very appealing. So I don't think so. I mean, even if you think of IKEA, I mean, where's IKEA? I mean, he made a great point there. IKEA is in the busiest part of town, right? It's off Germantown Parkway. And so I think it's possible that if IKEA doesn't come, no other business comes. But it's not really probable. It's very likely, given that it's the busiest part of town, one of the most important pieces of land in our busiest part of town, that someone else would have come along, and possibly somebody else that would have paid some taxes, right? Right, and that's what we all want.
And hired more people.
Exactly. Right. I was only going to say, just back to that point, if you do shift out of this winners and losers mode into a general tax cut mode, by the way, then you can stimulate a whole bunch of additional economic activity. First, you've got to quantify where the incentives are, which no one does a good job at, right? We don't even know how much money we're giving away, right? But if you were to quantify it and know what you were giving away, and then shift as much as possible to just a general tax cut mode, then you can create a whole lot of additional economic activity, the same way some of these other things like infrastructure in schools and low on crime create activity.
Someone sounds like a Republican.
I think you were in office or was almost in office when we talked about Electrolux and Mitsubishi coming to town. They got huge tax breaks, and there was a lot of fanfare about it. But those companies not even around right now in Memphis. It just seems to me that we do buy into what these companies are saying, and they don't have to live up to them.
No, they definitely don't. No. I mean, we were told for years we've got clawbacks, and there are these clawbacks coming. I mean, it's laughable. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to, belittle anybody, but it's just the truth of the matter. We don't have clawbacks. We didn't get anything back. It doesn't happen. I mean, I'm not trying to belittle, because I understand the need to talk about jobs, and it's a really, really high priority issue. But I'm just saying, when these deals are done and put together with the consultants, they just don't happen the way they are advertised to happen. And I'm just going to take back my Democratic bona fides here.
Yeah.
I'm for campaign subsidies. I'm for public financing of campaigns, because I do think that there is this kind of vicious kind of back and forth between politicians and donors, that I think public financing of campaigns, which is, I know that's a reach and that's not going to happen anytime soon, but I do think the public financing of campaigns would help people to govern the way they campaign. Because right now, people campaign, 100% of politicians campaign against these subsidies, at least on the Democratic side, that's for sure. They campaign against corporate welfare for the most part, but none of them, once they're in office, all bets are off. And that's a strange thing. And so we've got to try to figure out what is causing that. And I think that public financing of campaigns is one way to look at it and try to solve that.
With our flat population growth, and you're the mayor of Shelby County, and we grew 0.2%. Why not bite the bullet? I'm going back to the other argument here. Why not bite the bullet, give some tax incentives to get these companies to come here, and hopefully the population will follow?
Well, I think one of the ways you recruit folks to your city is really their quality of life investments. And so we need to do a better job of investing in our community. So people always ask me all the time, well, why are you for bike lanes? Nobody's in those bike lanes. And I have to explain to them, well, the reason is because we're trying to recruit people that are young or young families. Those are the folks that are at a decision point about where to live the next 40, 50 years, where to raise a family. And all of those folks care about public transit, care about bike lanes, care about the school system, care about all these issues. And so if we're going to recruit those folks, that's how you grow, right? That's why Nashville is booming. It's because people are moving into Nashville. That's why Memphis has blight, because no one is moving into the neighborhood. So if somebody leaves a home, it becomes blighted because there's no new family to move in. So it's pretty plain that the new families are young families, and you've got to understand what they want. And there's plenty of surveys. We take surveys all the time, asking folks nationally, what are you looking for in a community? What would get you to move here? And these are the kinds of things they say. They say things like transit and, making sure your neighborhoods are clean and that you've got new housing stock and that, and they talk movie theaters and grocery stores and bike lanes. I mean, that's what they talk about. And so those are the kind of things we have to focus on. And they don't, these other issues don't really come up. So So that's what I would say to how you get your city to grow is you've got to take an Austin mindset, a Nashville mindset. It is a focus on the people that are making the decision to move, and that's really young folks.
Mayor, where do you see it headed, and where would you like for it to be headed?
I think those are probably the same. I think there's some areas of opportunity with respect to approaches to stadiums. And I think both sides of that negotiation table understand that. I think there is, less of a desire to spend wildly. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It is going to happen. The spending will happen. It's going to happen in Memphis and Shelby County, across Tennessee, and across the country. But I do think that both sides of that table realize that, hey, this doesn't necessarily benefit all parts of our community when we have other alternatives with those tax dollars. The other area of opportunity is really regional cooperation. We're probably not going to get a solution at the federal level. I think everybody would like that. That'd be the best solution. It's just to get a federal law that says, you can't do certain things or you can't do some of these things. But since that's probably not going to happen, we are going to have to focus on regionalism a lot more. And so Memphis and Shelby County sits on two borders, the Arkansas border and the Mississippi border. And so there is a chance that, all of us could agree that we're going to take some kind of comparable approach and not compete against one another so much going forward. I think that happens in Shelby County. There's 7 cities in Shelby County. And I think a lot of us are really having those conversations right now that, it's nice to have something in the city of Memphis. But if it's in the city of Germantown or in the city of Collierville or in Bartlett or any of our other cities, Lakeland or Millington, well, that's pretty good too. And and maybe we should all be on the same page there. And of course, we have Shelby County kind of as the anchor to make sure that we're not all competing against one another. So regional cooperation, I think, is probably a positive step and something that we will see more and more of. We need to have more conversations like this, try to make sure that more audiences are informed on what's happening in the community and where their tax dollars are being spent. That there are a lot of pieces to pick up on here. Of course, here in Tennessee, the mega site would be one of those. Another one where there is kind of bipartisan agreement is workforce. Investments in workforce are a good idea, and companies do make a lot of decisions about where to move on with respect to the quality of your workforce, and that's something government could be more involved in.